Today we're going to be installing a BD pulse manifold on a 2001 Dodge. BD part number for this application is a 1045985. This fits the 98.5 to 2002 trucks. This is the T3 foot manifold. We're going to do a quick unboxing on the manifold and show you everything that comes with it. So the BD pulse manifold is a three-piece design. And it is a very good manifold, very heavy and well built. Again, this is a three-piece design. This will allow for expansion and contraction, and we won't have the cracking problems like you have with the stock manifold. Also, there's a hardware bag that comes with that. That is for the turbo mounting. That we'll show you that inside the video. You get your installation instructions and a BD sticker. With this manifold, we need to note that this manifold does not come with gaskets. The gaskets for this particular truck will be a 104, BD part number 1045986. That is the gaskets for the installation. That comes with the turbo to manifold gaskets, and also the manifold to engine gaskets as well. It comes with the turbo to manifold gasket that you need for the automatics, undivided turbine housing, or the divided turbine housing of standard shifts. So that is just a quick unboxing on the BD pulse manifold, three-piece design, T3 foot, part number 1045985. So now we're going to get started with our installation. The reason we're installing a three-piece manifold on this truck is because our stock manifold has got a crack in it. If you've got a 5.9 truck, you'll want to make sure that you look for these 5.9s, and some of the 6.7s are showing up with them too. You're going to want to look for cracks in the exhaust manifold. Cracks in the exhaust manifold are going to rob your turbo of efficiency. They're going to cost you power, raise your EGTs, so on and so forth, things that we don't want. So we're going to be replacing this. This is very, very common failure. So we're going to show you how to replace the manifold today. I'm going to do this a little bit differently. When you're removing the manifold off of these trucks, this is the 98.5 to 02 5.9s in particular, you can actually remove the manifold with the turbo attached to it and bring it all out in one assembly. I'm going to do something a little bit different today. I'm going to actually remove the turbo first and then remove the manifold. That way this video stands for two reasons. One, you'll know how to just remove the turbo, and number two, you'll know how to remove the manifold with the turbo and everything attached to it as well. So we're going to do it both ways. So we're going to go ahead and get started with removing our turbo. The first thing that we've done is obviously we've taken out our intake box, took it out quick and easy. You've seen us do that several times. I removed the battery on this truck. The reason why I do that is because it keeps the acid off my shirt, eating through my shirt. You don't want anything that, if you drop something, when you're bringing it out, turbo or something, if it crosses on both posts, then you've got yourself an electrical disaster. So took the battery out, took the intake box out. Next, I'm just going to go ahead and start unhooking all of my intake and my exhaust clamps. We'll show you that. First thing that we're going to do in removing our turbo is we're going to go ahead and take off our exhaust and our charge side clamps. So you can do this a couple different ways. If you want to just unbolt the two bolts of the downpipe, you can do that as well. I'm not changing the turbo, so I'm going to go ahead and just take this clamp off the back at the flange, the 11 metric. Just go ahead and loosen it up, and that will allow you to, open the clamp up enough to separate it from the turbo, just like that. And you can push it back. You can push it back, and then that's got you completely free. And then when you go to reinstall, it's pretty close right there anyway, so it's not that bad to reinstall it. Next, you're going to want to take a long extension and a swivel, a universal, and get your intake clamps off. You're going to want to unbolt the one at the turbo. And then on the charge air pipes, either one of these will work. This is a good time to look for charge air leaks as well. And what I mean by that is this truck is a perfect example. This AC line right here with the sensor, the AC sensor, it is almost rubbed a hole in this intercooler boot. So we're going to correct that as well while we're in here. We're going to move this AC line over just a little bit to give us some relief off of this. This can also rob you of power. Once this were to rub all the way through, and I'll show you once I get it out of the truck, it would totally be a good sized boost leak. So we're going to go ahead and remove the intake off of here. We've got the exhaust pipe off of there, and then we'll show you with everything off. Okay, we've got our intake elbow off of the turbo now. You can see that. We've got our exhaust disconnected. We're ready to take off our oil pressure line. First, we're going to take it off at the filter head, 13/16 to remove it there. And then we're going to get it at the turbo. At the turbo, you're going to need a 13/16 and a 3/4. You're going to want to hold the fitting that's actually inside of the turbo while you turn the 13/16 on top off. So we've got a 3/4 here that we're going to put on the fitting at the bottom, then a 13/16 to loosen up the fitting on top of the turbo. Then we can go ahead and take our pressure line off of the turbo. So now we're going to remove the oil drain tube. The oil drain tube does not have to be completely removed. It is it has a flexible piece closer to the block that will allow you to just push it out of the way. So there's two 10 metric bolts right here at the flanges. There's one here and directly on the other side of it. I use a 1/4 inch drive ratchet and that's probably a 6-inch extension and 10 metric, and that gives me all the leverage I need to break the bolts loose and also to remove them. So you just want to remove the two 10 bolts. Once you have both of the bolts out, you can see that the tube will fall away. Okay, with all of our oil lines and our exhaust disconnected, our inlet elbow off, our drain tube is disconnected, you can see down there at the bottom, it's actually time to go ahead and remove the turbo. This is where it gets fun. There are 4 15 metric bolts. There are 2 on this side of the turbo foot. There are 2 on this side of the turbo foot. This is all that's left to remove the turbo. You're going to want to, when you're removing these nuts, you want to remove the bottom 2 on both sides first. Leave the top 2 on because they're more easily accessible and bring the turbo out. So we're going to show you how to do that now. Our camera angle is going to be a little bit off of the turbo foot itself, but we're still going to be able to explain to you how to do this. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to remove the coolant line hold down bracket that is right above the turbo right here. This is a 15 metric. We're going to go ahead and remove it now. And the reason why we're removing this is because the bottom 15 bolt is a bear to get to. The bottom 15 nut is a bear to get to. If you remove this line, this gives you the ability to move it out of your way and move it where you need it to be. To get to that 15 metric nut, I found just a normal everyday wrench. 15 metric is the best way to get it. This is the bottom one. I'll get it on the nut there, just give it a good push. It should come loose. You're going to want to try to soak these fasteners if you can in penetrating oil overnight. It'll make your job a whole lot easier. So we're going to fight the next 2 off. So that's got our bottom one. Our next one, our 15 metric on the front side of it. You can get it with the wrench if you want to. There's just enough room in there for your hand to get in there to get it. It's actually one that you can reach with a ratchet and a universal if you'd like to go that route too. Okay, we've got our bottom two 15 metric nuts off. We're ready to take the turbo out. So our bottom, or our top two are all that are left. This one is the easiest one to get to, so I'm going to leave it, and I'll get my back one off of here. Now my front one is next. And we're just going to go ahead and drop the turbo out. Slide it right off the studs. Out she comes. Now to remove the manifold, we go ahead and start removing the 13 metric bolts and spacers. If you're having problems removing these, I suggest to go ahead and bring the engine to operating temperature, shut it off, and then go ahead and remove these bolts. That'll make it a whole lot easier on you on removing them. Start with your bottom ones first, get your bottom ones out, and then you can come back and get your top ones. You want to leave your top ones in there so that the manifold's actually got something to support it to. It can support itself to the engine. So 13 metric, just take your time through them. If any of them give you trouble, I would suggest stopping there. Probably bringing the engine up to operating temperature so that you don't have any problems with broken bolts. A broken bolt in the head will make for a bad day. We're down to our last two bolts now. Both of these are already loosened up for us. We're just going to go ahead and remove them. I'm going to leave that one in there, and I'll get the one with the coolant stud out next. You'll want to remember where your coolant stud bolt goes, because you're going to go back with it in the same position on the new manifold. Actually, that's not correct. You're going to get a new bolt on the new manifold and a coolant line bracket to hook it all back up. Excuse me. We're now getting ready to install the BD manifold. BD's instructions will have you remove two of the studs from either the manifold or the turbo. Now, some of the turbo configurations, the studs, when you remove it, they'll still be in the turbo. Two will be in the manifold and two will be in the turbo. With this configuration truck, the standard shift, we had all four of the studs were left in the manifold, which that's fine too. So what we're going to do is to be able to use all of the hardware that BD supplies us with. BD's kit does not actually come with the studs, but that's okay. If you heat your manifold up, you can remove the studs. Just use just good heating source and make sure you heat the manifold up. Stud remover, and you can get these out usually no problem. I will have them listed on the website in the stock parts section under turbo accessories or under turbos as well. And then you can use those. You can just buy yourself a couple of new studs if you can't get yours out, so that'll be just fine. So we want to roll those over into the threaded holes on the manifold, using the threaded holes on the manifold because my turbo is not threaded in any of its holes. So I'm going to put the studs in the threaded holes on the manifold, and I will hang the turbo actually from the bottom. So that will have the BD manifold prepared for installation. We will reuse our old hardware as far as the nuts go. BD supplies us with 2 bolts for the turbo. That's going to work just fine, but we're going to reuse our nuts. Again, there's different configurations on this. You may have to purchase a nut or a bolt, just depending on what it is. Just want to give you a heads up on that. If you need anything on that, just give us a call. We'll be glad to help you. Okay, now we're going to start prepping our engine for a reinstallation of the manifold. The first thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to go through all of the bolt holes in the head and re-chase the threads just to make sure that the threads are good and clean and everything's straight. This is a metric 10 by 1.5 pitch on everything here. So we go through and clean all those out. I also run a die across all of the bolts as well to make sure all those threads are good and clean and ready to go. And then we just want to clean all the holes up with compressed air. Make sure that they're all good to go here. I've got everything blocked off. I put my oil supply line back on to keep contaminants out of the oil pressure side, but I'm just going to go through and a little bit of compressed air there. Just get everything cleaned out before I start putting my manifold up. Now we're going to go ahead and place the manifold onto the head. We're going to just kind of mock it up with a couple of bolts here. What we've done is we've started our bolts inside the manifold and a gasket on them. The gaskets have a couple of ears on them to where they can't pull out through the bolts. So we're just going to, it's nice to have another set of hands here. So we're just going to set the manifold in there. Grab that front side, Wes. Thanks, sir. Okay, now that's got our manifold in and on. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and walk through and get the rest of our bolts in. The proper way to do this, with the manifold being 3-piece, if you need to move anything, if any of your holes don't line up, which is a pretty good chance that they won't, you can use a rubber mallet to shift it one way or the other. You just don't want to try to use an alignment tool inside the holes because that's going to roll threads and cause you more problems. This one looks like it's going to be pretty easy, which is nice because most of them aren't like that. The top 2 bolts, you're going to want to use the bolts that BD supplies you with. BD supplies you with a couple of stainless steel bolts. They're Allen headed. The shorter of the 2 are the ones that you're going to want to use for this. So they go at the center 2 holes here. So you can just fit your gasket in on the manifold and run the BD bolts in there. Now I'm going to go through, I'm going to get my gasket in, my bolts in at each port. On your 2 center bolts, BD supplies you with a couple of washers. You want to make sure that you get the washers on there as well. Gasket, washer, insert your gasket. Okay, with all the bolts and the manifold in, we're going to go ahead and start torquing these down. You want to torque it from the center out, so start here at the center and start working your way on to the outside, alternating. 35 foot-pounds is your torque spec. Your Allens that BD supplies you with, they are 5/16 hex, so we're going to want to do them first. We're going to take all of these bolts to 35 foot-pounds. Once you do a bottom one, or once you do a top or a bottom, go ahead and check the one on the other end too to make sure that it's still within spec. We're going to go ahead and set our turbo on the manifold now. We've got our studs already in the manifold. You're going to want to use 2 of your nuts that came off of the stock manifold. Go ahead and put whatever gasket your turbo has. Ours has got the divided plenum, so we're going to put our gasket on. We're going to go ahead and set our turbo inside here. Now we're going to go ahead and start our 2 bolts that BD supplied us with. You're going to want to use the washers that were supplied to you as well. And then the 2 stock nuts. So you're going to be using the longer of the bolts that they supplied you with in the washer. And then the nut. Okay. And the next bolt and the nut. It almost goes all the way down, so it's easier just to pull the bolt back and start the nut. So we're going to go ahead and tighten everything down here. Torque spec on this is 35 foot-pounds, just like it is on the Manifold. Now we're going to want to connect the coolant line support bracket that BD sends in our kit. We're going to go ahead and use the hardware that they send. So you want to face it downward to where it makes up the distance with the coolant line. Lock washer. Okay, now we're going to use the bolt and back side of the plate there. Nut and lock washer on this side. Then we'll tighten that down. At this point now, we can go ahead and reinstall our oil supply line to the turbo. Make sure that it is free of all debris. (13/16) to tighten up the one at the filter base, and then 13/16 and a 3/4 to tighten up the turbo side. You'll notice on the BD Manifold there's 2 tap ports. These are for EGT probes or drive pressure gauge, whatever that you want to hook up here. They're 1/8 by 27. Get yourself a 3/16 hex and go ahead and tighten those up. Make sure that they're tight, and they could have come from the factory a little bit loose, and you'll have another exhaust leak there that you didn't intend to have. So it's just a good idea to check those 2 plugs before you go any farther. Now we're going to reattach the oil drain to the turbo. Before you do this, you're going to want to make sure that you don't reuse your stock gasket. I would suggest putting a new gasket in there. Cummins part number at the time, at the filming of this, is 5264569 for the drain gasket. We do have that on the website, listed under the 98 to 02 trucks. So we're going to go ahead and replace our gasket now. With our drain tube reconnected and our gasket in place, it's time to put our elbow on. Your turbo discharge elbow has got a gasket in there. Make sure that you don't lose your gasket. Your gasket is still in there before you install it. So we're going to go ahead and install this now. we had showed you also that our intercooler pipe, our intercooler line, was very dangerously close to an AC line down here. We have fixed that. We have made that adjustment to where it won't be rubbing a hole in our intercooler boot now. So that is in good shape. So we're going to tighten these clamps up. Then we're going to go ahead and do our exhaust clamp next. Now we're going to go ahead and reinstall our exhaust outlet to the turbo and reclamp it. Everything's already lining up real nice here, so pretty easy. When you're doing this, and it goes without saying, I guess, but you want to make sure that you get both the ears of the clamp engaged onto both surfaces of what you are clamping to. Make sure that there's no gaps around it before you begin to tighten. If you miss one of the ears, of what you're working on, you're going to have a leak. You're going to have a leak at that point. So make sure that the clamp is engaging both sides. Okay, so next we've got our exhaust on, we've got our discharge pipe on. We're going to go ahead and set our battery in the battery tray now. Okay, we're going to go ahead and begin installing our intake now, and this is going to be our finishing touch on the job to get us ready to start the truck. Now, before you start the truck, you can do a couple of different things if you want to here. If you want to put a little bit of oil inside of the turbo, we actually went back and did that. Put a little oil inside the turbo. That way the turbo's got fresh supply of oil there when the truck first starts up. If it's been sitting for a while you were doing this job, or if you're like me and you were shooting a video and you were on and off the truck and it took you 3 days, so we just put a little bit of fresh oil in there. So she's got some on the bearings when she starts up, but that's it. The whole install probably going to take you guys a few hours, better part of a Saturday afternoon if you're doing it in your driveway. Basic hand tools is all you need. Nothing really special there. It's nice to have swivels when you're working on the, or universals when you're working on the drain tube as well, because there's one bolt on the drain tube, especially if you've got an aftermarket turbocharger, that could be a little bit hard to get to. And that's really something that we didn't talk about in this video. We kind of centered around this being a stock turbo truck, but you know, if you use the BD manifold with aftermarket turbos, there could be some things that are going to be different here, but all the basics are going to be the same. Oil charge line, the oil drain line, some of your exhaust configurations are going to be a little bit different, or some of your intercooler configurations are going to be a little bit different too. But other than that, pretty straightforward job. Really good upgrade. If you've got a cracked manifold, instead of going back with a one-piece manifold, go back with the jointed manifold like this, the 3-piece. It allows the expansion and contraction that's going to happen with the engine naturally, keep you from having the cracks. So this should be something that's going to be on the truck for the life of it. One last piece of information before we sign off here that I forgot to mention in this is, after a couple of heat cycles, after a couple of times of driving the truck and it comes up to operating temperature and cools back down, you're going to want to go back through all of your bolts and retorque them. The manifold bolts are 35 foot-pounds. Same thing for the 4 bolts at the turbo. So after a couple of heat cycles, make sure you go back and check all your torques, because you will have had some of it that probably have backed off just a little bit. So again, if you have a question on this installation or any of our other installations, please give us a call. Thank you.